Well, I'm Ameera Khan, Ameera Sultana Khan. I use she, her pronouns. I am a transgender Muslim woman, community organizer, software engineer, someone who cares deeply about theology and dreams and art and light moving through art. In the past, my homes have been St. Louis, Missouri, Madison, Wisconsin, a little bit of Chicago, and currently it's the greater Twin Cities area. Online, I am Sacred Propaganda on Instagram, Facebook, other platforms. I am in Northfield, so an rural expert of the Twin Cities. So a lot of my community organizing looks like liberation theology of Islam, so in queer inclusive Islamic theology. Recently I founded the Queer Muslims of Minnesota, so that's just currently a group chat, but I want it to grow bigger and be a space for theological grounding for a lot of queer Muslims in the Twin Cities. I've been speaking at protests. I allow my lived identities and the inherent resistance and revolution in letting those stay together come out in my speeches at protests or in my comedy sets that I perform. What does liberation look like for queer Muslims and Muslims in general? I think there are a lot of restrictions that Muslims and really all humans who are in community of any sort have put on themselves and the world around them. Specifically for a lot of the transphobia and homophobia that exists in the Muslim community, that is coming from a place of colonization and the imposing of Victorian gender normative ideals and sexual normativity onto colonized populations. My grandparents lived under British occupation in the South Asian, Indian, Bangladeshi area. They had to hide any form of gender or sexual non-normativity, and if they didn't, that was punishable by death. Even after that was gone, the remnants of that still live in the psyches that they then pass on to their children, who then pass on to me, and they justify it through lens of religion that is not necessarily divinely inspired. What is holy and divine, I think, and my conception of liberation is fully accepting all aspects of ourselves, all masculine and feminine aspects that every human being has in them. What I love most about my community is that it's extremely diverse, and I mean that in a very good way, not a very oh, here's our one person of color. It's a diverse place, right? I grew up in a mosque environment where every day I was interacting with Pakistanis, Indians, Albanians, Bosnians, Somalis, Algerians, Saudi Arabians, Qataris, Yemenis, and all of us had a shared understanding of Islam, right? And how we interact with it. And of course, all of that, we can talk about, inherent classism and all of the different racism and colorism and all of these isms that come into that experience of a diverse, multicultural, multinational community. But the fact remains is all of us were there, and all of us were giving our individual experiences and our communal experiences to our little microcosm living in St. Louis, Missouri, right? So I think that's one of the most beautiful aspects of Islam, is how it embraces true diversity. And I think that's compatible with queer and trans identities, and it's just an aspect that yet has to be fleshed out and chiseled, if you will. What do I appreciate in myself? I don't know, I just took nudes last week, or 2 weeks ago, for the first time in my life. It was a queer BIPOC retreat in nature, and I had never gone skinny dipping before, but because all of us were doing it, I was okay, I'll brace myself, let's try this out. And it was actually really freeing. Like the first 20 minutes, I was like, what's going on? And then after that, if I was able to like really embrace myself, everyone was like vibing and embracing ourselves. It was truly a hot girl summer. We had some like, one of the people there was a photographer and she was offering to take nudes of us. And I was like, I don't know, but I'll try this out. And it was actually super powerful for me to look at my own body and say, wow, like I am sexy, I am beautiful, I love this body, which is not something that comes naturally to women in general, or I'd say humans, anyone living under capitalism, right? We're taught that we have some inherent flaw with our body, and if you just buy this product, it'll be okay, and you'll get to fix it. And so being able to just be completely myself with no additions was freeing, to accept myself like that. How has queer joy been showing up for me lately? This is a super lovely question, because less than a year ago now, my house burned down the day we purchased it. And so I have been living in like temporary housing, like an extended stay hotel that is absolutely haunted, and like an apartment in downtown Minneapolis where you can hear the Hennepin County medical sirens going off every 2 a.m. And it was just like a really hectic, unsettled time when I was getting ready to start nesting with my wife, right, in our forever home that we had just purchased. So it was definitely not a joyous time. I saw like my wife's heart rate spike the night of the fire, and then it never came down for 6 months until we moved back in the house. So during that time, the sheer amount of support we got from the local queer community, people were like volunteering for food trains for us. People came to our haunted little extended stay and gave us company and food and encouragement. And then once we were in the apartment, the temporary apartment, then they came and also like celebrated my birthday with me, celebrated my partner with me, who would drive however long and try to find parking in downtown Minneapolis every single weekend just to spend time with me. So I was really grateful for the way that like queer community specifically showed up to hold me in that time of need. Now that I've been back in the house for 3 months, I had a July 5th weekend sort of like cookout, and we had so many people come, and it was really beautiful to be able to like hold people back the way they had held me. How do I see queer joy as inherently resistance to all of the forces of fascism and authoritarianism and evil that are in the world? I think the whole point of fascism, the whole point of Mr. 45 putting on this huge show of I'm going to do a military parade and I'm going to give 10 times the funding to ICE and all of these things is to scare people. It is to intimidate us into thinking that we are powerless and must cower and hide. We are the 99%. We have power, right? Maybe not just queer folks, but that's why intersectional solidarity is important, right? We have solidarity between other working class like folks and other, upper class folks. And we have, I think, as a sort of resistance, if you will, right? Like Trump's approval rating is like in the tank, right? It is in the ground, as is Netanyahu's, both of these architects of genocide, right? Everyone knows the emperor wears no clothes. But we have collective power, and I think the very first step in that is letting the joy infect us and say we will not be scared of all of these, moves that you're trying to scare us with, because we have each other. How do I stay grounded in all of this chaos, personal and political and international chaos? One thing I do is I look to my partners, right? They're astrologically, they're like, you should marry this girl. And I'm like, already did, great. And so she's really like my rock for a lot of things, but also she has a lot of anxiety and it rubs off on me. So sometimes when I'm like, how do I manage that aspect of it? I think of and offer my respects to like the Prophet Muhammad and like my grandfather, right? Saying like all of these ancestors, right, that have come before us in the Muslim community and in my personal family lineage. I pray, I consult with like sort of Sufi understandings of Islam and understandings of like Islamic practices such as like muhasaba, right? Where you are reviewing the actions that you did in the past month or however long and reviewing the impact it's had on your heart and like meditating on the state of your heart and bringing that in line with the divine will, right? So there's a lot of tools that Islam gives me to ground myself, and there's a lot of tools that I think community gives me to ground myself, right? For queer people to learn and hold on to yourself and each other. That's all we have. We are all we have, right? Every culture has these aspects of universality to them that resonate in all human beings, whether they admit it or not. And that resonation is what we want to focus on and bring out to create the utopia that we want to live in.